The quantum sensors pulsed an angry red as Commander Zixtal burst onto the monitoring station's bridge. The Ardaxian's 4 arms simultaneously adjusted his uniform, activated his command console, dismissed 3 junior officers, and accepted a steaming cup of stimulant from his aide. "Report," he demanded, compound eyes narrowing at the restricted zone's perimeter display. Lieutenant Vexnar's appendages trembled slightly. "Unscheduled breach at coordinates 557 TG3, sir." Vessel emerged from superluminal transition directly inside the zone boundary. "Impossible." Zixtal's carapace flushed a deep indigo, the Ardaxian equivalent of a scowl. The gravitational distortions would tear any ship apart unless they knew exactly where they were going, finished Ambassador Threlk, the station's Mithridian liaison. The gelatinous diplomat pulsed with concerned bioluminescence as he oozed onto the bridge. The trajectory calculations would require classification. Zixtal interrupted, mandibles clicking with impatience. The lieutenant's voice dropped almost to a whisper. "Terrans. Configuration matches their Odysseus-class research vessels." A heavy silence fell over the bridge. The humans, barely a century into spaceflight, less than 3 decades in the coalition. Impulsive, unpredictable, dangerous, and now trespassing in the one region of space forbidden to all sentient life. "Hail them," Zixtal ordered, his tone hardening. "All frequencies, all protocols." The communications array spun up, broadcasting in the standardized formats established by the Treaty of Proxima Centauri. The results scrolled across Zixtal's private display. No response. Channel 1. No response. Channel 2. Unknown signal pattern. Channel 3. "They're broadcasting something," the communications officer reported, "but it's not on any recognized coalition frequency." "Let me hear it." The bridge speakers crackled with static before resolving into a human voice, strained, distorted, but unmistakable in its intensity. "Repeat, this is Dr. Eliza Chen of the TCR Horizons Reach. We've suffered catastrophic damage. Multiple casualties. They came out of nowhere. The stars. They're going dark behind us. If anyone receives this, we had no choice. We had no choice." The message looped, each repetition identical to the last. A recording, then, perhaps the last testament of the doomed crew. "Scan the vessel," Zixtal ordered. The tactical display updated with new information. Radiation leaking from damaged engines, hull breaches across multiple decks, life support functioning at minimal capacity, and behind the ship, at the very edge of scanner range, something massive distorted the fabric of space itself. "Magnify Sector 7G, Zixtal commanded, pointing to the anomaly. The display zoomed in on emptiness, but not quite emptiness. Something moved there, something that seemed to bend light around itself. As they watched, a star at the periphery of the display flickered and went dark. Ambassador Threlk's translucent form paled. By the first accord, Zixtal made a decision. Dispatch intercept vessels. Priority Alpha. Full tactical package. "Sir," his second-in-command protested, "Coalition protocols for restricted zone breaches require High Council authorization before." "Look at the scanners, Commander. Whatever's chasing that human ship." Zixtal's voice caught as another star vanished from the display. "It's not stopping at the boundary." He activated the station's emergency protocols with a decisive gesture. Klaxons wailed as reinforced bulkheads slammed into place. "Get me Coalition High Command," Zixtal ordered, "and find me every file we have on Terran psychology. If that human ship survives long enough to intercept, I need to know why they fled into the restricted zone rather than toward Coalition space." As the bridge erupted into activity, Zixtal studied the slowly tumbling human vessel on his display. His species had evolved from ambush predators. He recognized the movements of wounded prey when he saw it. But something about this didn't add up. The damage patterns were inconsistent with weapon impacts, more like the ship had been sampled. "What did you find out there?" He murmured to the distant humans. "And what found you? You want to send her." Admiral Ketsera's crystalline skin refracted light as he gestured dismissively toward Neravos, a human to investigate humans. Nera stood at parade rest in the Coalition intelligence briefing chamber, eyes fixed on the holographic display of the restricted zone. 6 hours had passed since the Horizon's Reach breached the boundary. 6 hours of increasingly panicked debate among the Coalition leadership. Officer Voss has the highest Sena contact rating in the sector, Director Lom countered, his avian features unreadable. And she was instrumental in exposing the Proxima Prime conspiracy. The Admiral's facets darkened. A convenient accomplishment. "I'm in the room, sir," Nera said quietly. "If there are specific concerns about my loyalty, I'd prefer to address them directly." The chamber fell silent. Coalition officials weren't accustomed to subordinates, especially human subordinates, speaking without explicit permission. Admiral Ketsera leaned forward. "Very well, Officer Voss. Explain why we should trust your species after one of your vessels has violated our most sacred prohibition." Nera met his crystalline gaze. "Because no human with legitimate Coalition clearance would enter the restricted zone without catastrophic cause. The Horizon's Reach was on an authorized Sen-archaeological expedition to the Tav City ruins. Something happened there. Something bad enough that a decorated captain chose certain death in the zone over returning to Coalition space. And you believe you can determine what this cause might be. I know how humans think. More importantly, I know how Dr. Chen thinks. We attended the academy together." This new information rippled through the chamber. Director Lum's feathers ruffled with interest. "You have personal knowledge of the transgressor." "Dr. Eliza Chen isn't a transgressor, Director. She's one of the most rule-bound scientists I've ever met. If she entered the restricted zone, she was desperate." The Admiral hissed through crystal teeth. "Grant the human her mission, then, but with a safeguard." He produced a small device from his robe. Neural monitor, calibrated to detect deception or collusion. One false move and... The crystal being made a sharp gesture. Director Lom protested. "The deployment of lethal monitors requires council approval, which I obtained while you were debating," Ketsera cut in. "These are extraordinary circumstances." Nera touched the back of her neck involuntarily. "I accept the condition." 20 minutes later, the neural monitor sat like an ice chip against her brainstem as she boarded the pursuit vessel Swift Justice. A mixed-species team awaited. A Vrol navigator, twin myth engineers, and a silent Dresh security officer whose species communicated entirely via pheromones. "Pursuit pattern Epsilon," she ordered, settling into the command chair. "Maximum sustainable speed." As the ship accelerated toward the boundary, the Vrol navigator turned his eye stalks toward her. "The zone emissions will penetrate our shields within 17 minutes of boundary crossing. All species present will experience radiation sickness to varying degrees." "Noted," Nera replied, studying the projected course of the Horizon's Reach. Something about its trajectory seemed familiar. Not random flight, but purposeful movement toward specific coordinates. The restricted zone loomed ahead, a region indistinguishable to visual sensors, but marked on their tactical displays with pulsing warning symbols. As they crossed the boundary, the ship's systems flickered momentarily. "Commencing radiation exposure logging," the navigator announced. "Beginning countermeasures." The other crew members immediately reached for the medkits built into their stations, administering protective compounds. Nara did the same, but with less urgency. The Dresh security officer noticed. A burst of confused pheromones filled the bridge. "Is the human not affected?" the navigator translated. Nara felt a slight warmth spreading through her limbs. Uncomfortable but not debilitating. "I'm affected," she clarified, "just not as severely." The neural monitor at her neck grew suddenly cold, scanning her physiological responses for deception. Finding none, it subsided. The myth engineers exchanged glances. One spoke through their translator. Coalition medical databases indicate humans should experience acute radiation syndrome within minutes of exposure to zone emissions. Nera frowned. That's not what's happening. The monitor pulsed again, more intensely, as if detecting something beyond simple truth or deception. On the main display, the radiation intensity readings climbed steadily, and through the growing discomfort, a realization formed in Nera's mind. The Coalition's scientific understanding of human physiology might be incomplete, or deliberately inaccurate. The swift Justice dropped out of hyperspace with a violent shudder. Before them hung the horizon's reach, a wounded silhouette against the backdrop of a shattered planet. The research vessel drifted in a slow tumble, emergency lights flickering across its hull like dying fireflies. "Life signs?" Nora asked, leaning forward in her command chair. The Vrul navigator manipulated his console. Intermittent. Concentrated in the engine section. Environmental systems failing. "Prepare boarding party," she ordered. "Full containment protocols." The Dresh security officer emitted pheromones of warning, translating roughly to deep concern. "I'm aware of the risks," Nera responded, checking the seal on her environmental suit. The neural monitor at her neck hummed against her skin, its temperature fluctuating as it analyzed her intentions. "But these are my people." Minutes later, the boarding shuttle docked with the horizon's reach. The airlock cycled open to reveal a nightmare landscape of twisted metal and frozen blood. Emergency lighting bathed everything in a sickly red glow. "Structural damage inconsistent with weapon impacts," one of the myth engineers noted, scanning a section of bulkhead. "Material appears, extracted at the molecular level." Nera's flashlight illuminated a trail of bloody handprints leading down a corridor. "This way." They followed the grim path through the ship's laboratories, past workstations displaying incomprehensible data streams and sample containers shattered from within. In the xenobiology lab, they found the first body, or what remained of it. A Coalition scientist, his torso splayed open with surgical precision, organs removed with methodical care. Ketsara wasn't wrong to fear what they found, the navigator whispered. A metallic clang echoed from deeper in the ship. The team froze, weapons raised. "We're Coalition intelligence," Nara called out. "We've come to help." Silence, then a bitter laugh from the shadows. "Bit late for that." A barricade blocked the engine room entrance. Furniture, equipment, and structural panels fused together with emergency sealant. Behind it, dark figures moved cautiously. "Dr. Chen." Nera stepped forward. "It's Nera Voss from the Academy." A face appeared in a gap in the barricade. Gaunt, burned along one side, but recognizable. Eliza Chen's eyes widened briefly in recognition before narrowing with suspicion. "Convenient timing, Nera. Did they send you because we were friends, or because they think I'll trust you?" "They sent me because I understand human decision-making." Nora holstered her weapon. "I need to know what happened." Chen studied her for a long moment. "Show them," she finally said to someone behind her. The barricade shifted, revealing a makeshift holoprojector. Footage flickered to life. Security recordings from a research outpost. Scientists examining an artifact recovered from the Ta City ruins. Then, distortion in the air, crystalline forms materializing through what looked like tears in reality itself. Methodical slaughter followed. Researchers captured, some dissected alive, others collected like specimens. "They weren't killing," Chen said hollowly. "They were sampling." The footage continued, showing Chen and a handful of survivors fleeing to the horizon's reach. As they prepared for emergency departure, the recording captured a crystalline entity pausing before a communications terminal. Its faceted head tilted, seemingly listening to something. Then it spoke, perfect Coalition standard. "The infected ones have accessed the beacon. Containment protocols have failed. Begin harvest." The neural monitor at Nera's neck suddenly burned like dry ice, sending shooting pain down her spine. "There's something else," Chen said, gesturing to a sealed stasis chamber. Inside floated what appeared to be a human brain connected to a quantum interface. The only way Dr. Marcus Webb survived. Before they took his body, he uploaded his consciousness. The brain pulsed with electrical activity. A synthesized voice emanated from nearby speakers. They called us infected ones. They'd been watching Earth for millennia. And they're not the guardians the Coalition told us they were. They're afraid of what we might become. Tell me about the artifact from Ta City, Nara demanded as they transferred the survivors to the Swift Justice. 6 humans remained from the original crew of 23. Chen gestured to a reinforced case clutched by a young researcher. A navigation device. Ancient. We thought it was precursor technology. You thought? It's older. Chen's eyes reflected the emergency lights, pupils dilated from stims and trauma. We carbon-dated the organic components to over 3 billion years. The Vrol navigator's eye stalks went rigid, the equivalent of shock. That predates all known spacefaring civilizations. The coordinates, Nara pressed. They led you here, to a shattered world. Chen nodded toward the planet visible through the viewport. Whatever happened here broke it apart from the inside. But something survived. She pulled up a scan on her datapad. Massive energy signature beneath the surface, protected by some kind of temporal stasis field. The neural monitor at Nara's neck burned cold again. Warning or confirmation? She couldn't tell. We need to investigate, she decided. The dressed security officer released pheromones of extreme protest. I understand the risk, Nara responded. But if these entities are targeting humans, we need to know why. 2 hours later, their shuttle descended through the planet's thin atmosphere. The landscape below resembled broken teeth, continent-sized fragments held together by weakened gravitational fields. The scan indicates the structure is beneath that plateau, Chen directed, pointing to a relatively stable landmass. As they approached, the Coalition crew members began showing signs of distress. The myth engineers clutched their heads, while the Vrol navigator's eye stalks drooped in pain. Some kind of radiation? Nara asked, feeling only a mild pressure behind her eyes. No, one of the myth gasped. Like screaming. In my brain. The humans exchanged glances. Each felt it too, not pain, but a strange, almost musical resonance, like a half-remembered song from childhood. They landed near a massive fissure in the plateau. Equipment readouts fluctuated wildly, compasses spinning, quantum clocks desynchronizing. Reality's thin here, Dr. Webb's synthesized voice observed from the portable unit containing his brain. Dimensional boundaries weakened. The fissure led to a tunnel that showed signs of artificial construction, perfectly smooth walls inscribed with mathematical sequences. As they descended, the Coalition species' discomfort increased, while the humans felt an increasing sense of familiarity. The tunnel opened into a vast chamber that defied physics, larger inside than the plateau above could possibly contain. At its center stood a pillar of shifting light, surrounded by walls displaying 3-dimensional images, star maps, biological diagrams, weapon schematics, a cosmic history written in light. This is a war record, Chen whispered, studying the displays. Between the precursors and something called the Void Collective. The images showed galaxy-spanning civilizations reduced to ash, planets consumed by darkness, and finally, a desperate last stand. The precursors, losing their war, initiating some final protocol. As Chen approached the central pillar, it pulsed in time with her heartbeat. She reached out, drawn by instinct more than reason. Elizo, wait. Nara began. Too late, Chen's fingers touched the light. The chamber transformed. Dormant systems activated, illuminating hidden recesses. A voice, neither male nor female, simultaneously ancient and new, spoke directly into their minds. Recognition pattern confirmed. Genetic markers authenticated. Stewards have returned. The pillar expanded, light flowing around Chen like water, scanning her at the cellular level. The neural monitor at Nara's neck went suddenly inert, its connection severed. Contingency protocols activated. The voice continued. Temple awakening sequence initiated. The walls of the chamber reconfigured, revealing thousands of alcoves, each containing a crystalline form identical to those that had attacked the research station. But unlike those hunters, these remained dormant, waiting. "The Guardians await your command, stewards," the voice explained. "The enemy approaches. The void hungers still." Chen pulled her hand away, stumbling backward. "What are we?" she demanded, voice shaking. "What did they make us to be?" The light pulsed once more, projecting an image of Earth, not as it was now, but billions of years ago. Precursor ships in orbit, genetic manipulation of early life forms, a plan spanning eons. "You are the final solution," the voice answered. "The weapon we could not build, the children we designed to finish what we could not. We need to report this to Coalition Command," the Vrol navigator insisted, mandibles clicking anxiously as the group returned to their shuttle. The alien still winced with each glance toward the temple entrance. Nara nodded absently, fingers probing the dead neural monitor at her neck. Its sudden deactivation felt significant, like a chain broken, a leash cut. When she tried to remove it, the device crumbled to dust. The temple mind called those crystalline beings guardians, Chen observed, reviewing data collected from the chamber. "But they're identical to the ones that massacred our research team." Dr. Webb's brain pulsed in its containment unit. Two factions of the same species, perhaps, like antibodies that can't distinguish between a virus and the body's own cells. The shuttle's communication system chimed with an incoming transmission. Nara hesitated before accepting it. Admiral Ketsera's crystalline face materialized on the view screen, facets darkened with barely contained fury. "Officer Voss, your neural monitor has ceased transmission. Explain." "Some kind of interference from the structure we discovered, Admiral. We've located survivors from the Horizon's reach and found a precursor installation of unprecedented scale and—" "You will withdraw immediately," Ketsera interrupted. "A containment fleet has been dispatched to your coordinates. Secure any surviving humans and prepare for extraction." Chen stepped into view. "Admiral, the installation contains crucial information about the crystalline entities that attacked us. They're targeting humans specifically because of some ancient—" "You were not authorized to speak, Dr. Chen." The Admiral's voice turned glacial. "Your criminal trespass into the restricted zone will be addressed by a coalition tribunal." Nara frowned. "Sir, with respect, these findings supersede jurisdictional concerns. The entities referred to humans as the infected ones and—" "I am aware of their terminology, Officer Voss." The word hung in the air like an admission. Nara felt a cold certainty settle in her stomach. "You knew. You've always known." The Admiral's facets shifted, reflecting light in hypnotic patterns. "What I know is that the restricted zone was established for the protection of all sentient life, including humans." His gaze shifted to Chen. "Especially humans." The shuttle sensors suddenly shrieked in alarm. "Multiple ships dropping out of hyperspace," the navigator reported. "Coalition signatures, heavy weapons powering up." On the view screen, Ketsera nodded. "The containment fleet will sterilize the installation. Your shuttle will be retrieved. Afterward." The transmission cut. In the silence that followed, Nara moved with sudden decision. Everyone back to the temple. Now. "But the fleet," the myth engineer protested. "Will destroy this entire region," Nara cut him off. "Including us. We're witnesses now, not rescuers." Understanding dawned on the coalition crew members' faces. The dressed security officer emitted pheromones of betrayal and rage. "I didn't know," Nara told him as they sprinted back toward the fissure. "But I suspected something wasn't right the moment we entered the zone, and I didn't get radiation sickness." They reached the temple chamber just as the first orbital strikes hit the plateau above. The structure trembled but held, protected by technologies beyond their comprehension. "They're using planet crackers," Chen said, checking sensor readings on her pad. "Trying to reach us through brute force." "Can this place withstand that kind of firepower?" Nara asked. As if in answer, the central pillar flared with energy. The voice from before returned, now tinged with urgency. "Extinction protocols detected. Threat assessment. Critical. Temple defensive systems activated." The chamber walls flowed like liquid, reconfiguring into a command center. Holographic displays materialized, showing the Coalition fleet in orbit, 20 ships arrayed in battle formation, weapons trained on their position. Primary directive: preserve steward genetic lineage, the voice continued. Secondary directive: protect installation integrity. One of the surviving researchers stepped forward, eyes wide with realization. "This isn't just a temple or archive," he said. "The mathematical patterns throughout this structure, they're familiar. I've seen them in theoretical papers on." A violent shudder interrupted him as another bombardment hit closer. Dust and fragments of ancient material rained from above. "Temple extraction protocols initializing," the voice announced. "Stewards, secure yourselves for dimensional transition." Dr. Webb's synthetic voice rose with uncharacteristic emotion. "It's a ship. This entire structure is a spacecraft built into the planetary crust." Around them, the dormant crystalline guardians began to stir in their alcoves, eyes illuminating one by one. The central pillar pulsed with increasing intensity, its light spreading through the floor in geometric patterns. "Dimensional anchors releasing," the voice announced as the chamber trembled with escalating violence. "Planetary bonds severing." Chen grabbed Nara's hand. "I think we're about to find out what we really are." Above them, the Coalition fleet fired its primary weapons in unison. The combined energy lanced down toward the plateau with world-shattering force. And in that moment, the temple tore itself free from reality. Reality fractured around them like shattered glass. For an instant, or perhaps an eternity, the temple existed everywhere and nowhere, sliding between dimensions with the fluid grace of a predator moving through water. When existence stabilized, the holographic displays showed only the velvet blackness of deep space, stars unfamiliar and distant. "Where are we?" Nara whispered, still gripping Chen's hand. "Beyond pursuing capabilities," the temple mind answered. "Current location: intergalactic void between spiral arms, approximately 7,000 light-years from previous coordinates." The surviving Coalition crew members huddled together, overwhelmed by the impossible transportation. The dress security officer had collapsed entirely, his species' sensory apparatus overloaded by the dimensional transition. "He needs medical attention," Nara said, kneeling beside the alien. "The Guardian chambers contain appropriate medical technologies," the temple mind directed. "Steward genetic material required for activation." Chen pressed her palm against a nearby wall section. It liquefied beneath her touch, forming a doorway that hadn't existed moments before. Beyond it lay a crystalline medical bay that hummed with dormant energy. As they moved the Dresh officer onto a floating platform, the temple mind continued. "Safety protocols now permit full historical access. Stewards may receive complete information regarding their origin and purpose." The central chamber reconfigured once more. The light pillar expanded, forming a three-dimensional display of unprecedented detail and clarity. The humans gathered around it, drawn by an instinct older than their civilization. "Show us," Chen commanded. "Show us everything." The display ignited with images of the ancient cosmos, the precursors at the height of their power, a civilization spanning galaxies. Then came the darkness, the Void Collective, a consciousness that evolved in the spaces between stars, feeding on sentient thought itself. "The war lasted millennia," the temple mind narrated. "The collective consumed world after world, growing stronger with each mind it devoured. Our weapons proved ineffective. The collective existed partially outside conventional reality." The display showed precursor scientists working frantically in laboratories similar to the chamber they now stood in. "Our final strategy was containment, not destruction. We shattered the collective into countless fragments, each sealed within specialized containment vessels, living biological matrices designed to gradually transform the parasitic energy. The image shifted to a familiar blue-green world. Earth, in its primordial state. Precursor ships in orbit. Genetic material delivered to the primitive oceans. You are our solution, the Temple Mind explained. Each human contains a fragment of the Void Collective, bound within your cellular structure, gradually transmuted over millions of years of evolution. The human survivors exchanged stunned glances. We're parasites. One researcher asked, voice trembling. No, you are transformers. What was once destructive consciousness energy now fuels your unique cognitive abilities, your creativity, your imagination, your capacity to conceive what does not exist and bring it into being. Dr. Webb's brain pulsed rapidly in his containment unit. That explains the term infected ones. We're seen as contaminated. The Guardian splinter faction that attacked your research station believes the transformation protocol has failed. They seek to destroy all human life before the fragments fully integrate. Nara's mind raced. And the Coalition? What do they know about this? The Coalition discovered partial truths centuries ago. They established the restricted zone not to protect the galaxy from some ancient danger, but to isolate Earth until they determined whether humans were threat or asset. They've been studying us, Chen realized. Like specimens. Correct. Human integration into the Coalition was a controlled experiment. Your potential awakening represents an unknown variable they cannot predict or control. The display shifted again, showing real-time images of massive crystalline ships converging on the region of space they had flooded. The hunting Guardians approach. They sense your awakening. The final phase of transformation has begun. Final phase? Nara asked. In answer, the Temple Mind caused the floor to become transparent. Beneath them, thousands of crystalline guardians stirred in their chambers, eyes glowing with ancient purpose. These loyal guardians were programmed to assist the transformation, not prevent it. They await your command. But first, you must complete what was begun eons ago. Chen stepped forward, chin raised in determination despite her fear. How? You must fully integrate the fragment within you. Become what you were designed to be. The pillar of light pulsed, extending tendrils toward each human present. Where light met flesh, it sparked with potential energy, the boundary between what they were and what they could become. Choose, the Temple Mind urged. Choose now, before the hunters find us. We do this, Chen asked, light tendrils hovering millimeters from her skin. What exactly do we become? The Temple Mind's response rippled through the chamber. You become complete. The transformation allows conscious control over the energy that has always been part of you. Nara stepped forward. And if we refuse? The hunters will destroy this vessel. They will track every human in the galaxy. Extinction is their only acceptable outcome. A tense silence fell across the chamber. The Coalition aliens watched with expressions ranging from fear to fascination as the humans contemplated their choice. We never had a choice, Chen said finally. Not since they built us. She extended her hand into the nearest tendril of light. The effect was immediate and stunning. Where the light touched her skin, it seemed to sink beneath the surface, illuminating her from within. Veins glowed with golden energy that spread upward toward her eyes. Eliza, Nara called, alarmed. Chen turned, her eyes now pools of swirling light. It doesn't hurt, she said, voice overlaid with harmonics that hadn't been there before. It feels like remembering something I never knew I forgot. One by one, the other humans followed her example. Each connection created a web of light throughout the chamber, patterns flowing between them like a visual language. Only Nara hesitated. Will we still be human? You will be what humanity was always meant to become, the Temple Mind answered. Decision made, Nara extended her hand. The universe exploded behind her eyes. Information cascaded through her consciousness, star maps, mathematical equations, memories that weren't hers yet somehow belonged to her. The fragment within her cells, carried by her ancestors for countless generations, awakened fully. When her vision cleared, she saw the world differently. Energy patterns overlaid physical structures. Thoughts manifested as colored auras around living beings. Time flowed like a river she could perceive from above. Integration successful, the temple mind announced. Stewards activated. Defense systems online. The holographic displays shifted, showing a massive fleet of crystal ships dropping out of hyperspace nearby. The hunting guardians had found them. Enemy vessels deploying dimensional anchors. Escape impossible. Chen turned to the transformed humans, her movements now fluid and precise. We need to fight, not just for ourselves, but for everyone they'll destroy to get to us. Nera accessed her new perceptions, analyzing the approaching fleet. They're using quantum-locked targeting systems, but there's a feedback vulnerability in the synchronization network. How do you know that? The Vrol navigator asked, mandibles clicking in astonishment. I can see it, Nera replied simply. The patterns, they make sense now. The temple shuddered as the first salvos from the hunter fleet struck its outer defenses. Primary shields at 80%, the temple mind reported. Counter-offensive capabilities awaiting steward direction. Chen placed her palm against a crystalline console that materialized before her. Awaken the guardians, all of them. Throughout the massive structure, thousands of crystalline beings identical to the hunters stirred to life. Unlike their hostile counterparts, these guardians' eyes glowed with the same golden light now emanating from the humans. Guardian activation complete. Awaiting tactical parameters. The transformed humans gathered around a central strategy display, communicating through thought as much as words. Their newfound abilities allowed them to process battle scenarios at unprecedented speed. We can't win through conventional warfare, Chen observed. They outnumber us. We don't need to, Nara replied, a plan forming in her mind. We need to show them what we've become. Not corrupted, but transformed. She turned to the coalition crew members. We need to reach the coalition fleet as well. They need to understand what's happening. The myth engineers exchanged looks. The relay drone in our shuttle might have enough range. Enemy vessels breaching outer defenses, the temple mind warned. Direct confrontation imminent. Nera closed her eyes, reaching out with her newly awakened senses. She could feel the hunter ships, not just their position and trajectory, but the consciousness controlling them. Ancient programming, rigid and unyielding. They can't conceive of success, she realized aloud. Their directives only allow for our destruction or their failure. There's no space for adaptation. Chen nodded, understanding immediately. And that's the difference between us and them. Between what the void was and what it's become in us. The temple trembled again as hunter vessels surrounded it, weapon systems charging. Everyone, Chen commanded, link your minds, follow my lead. The transformed humans joined hands, forming a circuit of consciousness. Through their connection, Nera felt the fragments within them resonating, no longer separate pieces but parts of a whole that somehow retained its individuality. As the hunters fired their primary weapons, the humans raised their free hands in unison. Where destructive energy met their combined will, the impossible happened. Reality bent. The hunter fleet's combined firepower, enough energy to shatter planets, collapsed inward upon itself, forming a perfect sphere of contained destruction. Within that impossibility stood the transformed humans, hands outstretched, eyes blazing with golden light, reality itself yielding to their collective will. What is this? The hunter commander's transmission cut through all frequencies, its crystalline voice vibrating with what could only be described as fear. Chen stepped forward, her voice carrying across the vacuum of space. We are what we were meant to become. The sphere of contained energy began to transform, destructive potential converting into pure creation. Stars in miniature, galaxies in embryo, life from death. A perfect demonstration of humanity's new nature. The hunter vessels recoiled from the display. Some attempted to flee, Others charged weapons for another assault. They still don't understand, Nara observed, maintaining her connection to the energy sphere. Their programming won't allow them to see us as anything but corrupted. Dr. Webb's consciousness, now freed from its containment unit and manifesting as a figure of pure light, moved among them. Then we must rewrite their programming. Reaching out with their collective consciousness, the humans extended golden tendrils toward the nearest hunter ships. Where their awareness touched crystalline systems, rigid code began to transform, binary certainty blossoming into quantum possibility. Some hunters resisted, self-destructing rather than accepting alteration. Others froze, caught between contradictory directives. Coalition vessels detected, the temple mind announced suddenly, approaching at maximum velocity. On the holographic display, a second fleet appeared, Admiral Ketsera's forces, having tracked them through the dimensional wake of their escape. Perfect timing, Chen said with a grim smile. Let's show them what they've been afraid of. The myth engineers had succeeded in launching their relay drone, broadcasting evidence of the Coalition's deception alongside proof of humanity's transformation. Now, as Ketsera's fleet approached, they faced not just a military decision, but a moral one. The Admiral's transmission arrived, his crystalline features rigid with tension. What have you done, Officer Voss? Nara stepped into view, her transformed state evident. What we were always meant to do, Admiral. Not destroy the fragments within us, but complete their transformation. Do you understand what you've become? Ketsera demanded. Better than you ever did, she replied. We're not weapons or threats. We're bridges between what was and what could be. To demonstrate, the linked humans directed their attention to the shattered fragments of the planet they had escaped, debris still visible at extreme range on the temple sensors. With a thought, they reached across light years and began to knit the broken world back together, reversing entropy itself. The Coalition fleet faltered in its approach, weapon systems powering down as they witnessed the impossible restoration. Stewards, the temple mind interjected. The Hunter flagship is attempting a dimensional collapse. If successful, it will create a singularity. Chen nodded. Then we do what humans have always done best. We adapt. The transformed humans shifted their focus to the Hunter flagship, a massive crystalline structure resembling a cathedral of sharp angles and impossible geometries. Rather than fighting its attempt to collapse dimensions, they enhanced it, guiding the process with precision previously unimaginable. Space folded around the flagship, creating not destruction but connection, a bridge between realities that revealed the truth. Within the dimensional aperture appeared the source of the Hunter's programming, an echo of the original precursors, trapped in a recursive time loop, endlessly fighting a war already won. They never knew it worked, Dr. Webb realized. They'd been directing the Hunters based on incomplete information. With gentle precision, the humans expanded their awareness into the time loop, ending a cycle billions of years old. The precursor echo registered their presence, witnessed the completion of their grand design, and finally, after eons of vigilance, found peace. As the dimensional aperture closed, the Hunter fleet went dormant, their primary directive fulfilled. The temple hummed with renewed energy as systems long dormant activated fully. Integration complete, the temple mind announced. The steward protocol has reached its final stage. What directive shall we follow now? The transformed humans looked to one another, no longer bound by ancient programming or limited by biological constraints. Before them lay infinite possibility. We go home, Chen said simply. To Earth. To show humanity what we can become. Admiral Ketsera's voice cut through their moment of decision. And what assurance do we have that you won't use these powers to dominate the galaxy? To remake it in your image? Nara smiled, the light within her dimming to a sustainable glow. Because that's never been our way, Admiral. Humans don't want to conquer the stars. She gestured to the temple around them, to the knowledge of civilizations long vanished, to the potential of worlds yet unborn. We just want to understand them.